taking a look at some of the creatures in the game, both legendary and non, it makes you wonder if Wizards kind of dropped the ball when it came to developing some of these cards. Let's take a look. What is up, Commander players? My name is Matt and you're watching Top Commander. So, on today's episode, I wanted to do something a little bit different. There's been a lot of discussion lately about the Secret Lair Walking Dead and all the issues surrounding that. I'm kind of veering away from that somewhat. I did release a video talking about that a little bit in a very different way and a very different perspective. So in today's video, what I wanted to do is take a look at some of the legendary creatures and some maybe not so legendary creatures, and kind of just discuss what is the standard that Wizards has for legendary creatures, or not being one, because Zendikars, there was a couple in Zendikar especially that just had me thinking, like, what in the world is going on? But before I get into that, if you want to support this channel, be sure to like, share, and subscribe as always. And if you wish to support this channel directly, be sure to visit patreon.com/topcommander. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and discuss the first one that kind of caught my eye in this the whole concept of this video. So, Phylath, World Sculptor, is a new commander from Zendikar Rising. It's 4 generic, a red, and a green. Alright? For a 5/5 legendary creature elemental. When Phylath enters the battlefield, create a 0/1 green plant creature token for each basic land you control. And it has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put 4 +1/+1 counters on target plant you control. Now, I'm pretty sure a lot of people have already figured out what I'm referring to. This seems like a slightly worse version of Avenger of Zendikar. And for those of you who are not familiar with Avenger of Zendikar, he is 5 generic and 2 green for a 5/5 creature elemental. When he enters the battlefield, create a 0/1 green plant creature token for each land you control. And it has landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a +1/+1 counter on each plant creature you control. Now, they sound somewhat similar, obviously. Avenger is 1 more color, or 1 more mana, and Phylath is 1 more color. They're both 5/5s, they're both elementals, but one's a legendary and one's not. Now, should they have been swapped? I feel like if Phylath had the text of Avenger of Zendikar, that would make more sense. And Avenger of Zendikar should have the text of Phylath, in my opinion. Now, why do I say that? Well, a legendary creature that cares about basic lands, I feel like if it was Avenger of Zendikar's text, where it didn't matter how many lands, you just, or didn't matter what kind of land, it just said you create a plant token for each land you control. That sounds more legendary to me than for each basic. Then there's also the landfall trigger. Now, at first appearance, Phylath's landfall trigger might sound more powerful. You get 4 +1/+1 counters on a single plant token. Now, here's where I beg to differ. First off, if you're in a landfall deck, you are going to find ways to put multiple lands into play. Every turn, you're going to hit your land drop, you're going to Rampant Growth, Farseek, all the different land ramp based cards. Azusa Lost But Seeking is going to be in there, Oracle of Maldia, and most of these are green cards. There are some in green and red, true. But how much is red really bringing to the party for a landfall deck compared to just a mono green landfall deck. In my opinion, there's not that many because land-based ramp is more of a green color thing. It's not so much reds. There are red and green cards. There's like Mina and Den, the legendary creature that lets you put additional lands into play. But you can do that with Oracle of Maldaya, Wayward Swordtooth, Exploration, Burgeoning. There's so many ways to get additional land drops. And you're going to be playing all of them in this deck, whichever one it would be. Which, when you think about it, so you play 4 lands, you get 4 +1/+1 counters put onto one of your plant tokens. Well, you would get a total of 16. So you could have one 16 power plant token. Or you could spread that out and with 4 land drops have 4 of your tokens be 4/5s. But that's only if you're running enough basic lands. But Avenger of Zendikar doesn't care what kind of lands it is. You could have 17 different lands and he'll give you 17 plant tokens. And if you make 4 land drops, you now have 17 4/5s. So it makes me wonder personally, what is the standard for a legendary creature? Because Phylath, to me personally, sounds a little bit more underpowered than Avenger of Zendikar. Yes, you get to add red, but I don't feel like the red manages that enough and qualifies it enough to being a legendary creature. And if that was the case, I feel like Avenger of Zendikar should have been the print from Phylath and vice versa. And this is another thing as well, when there's like certain abilities on creatures. For instance, Zareth San, the Trickster. 3 generic, a blue and a black for a 4/4 legendary creature Merfolk Rogue. He has Flash, interesting, but not necessarily needed. And he has 2 abilities. 1 is an activated ability. 2, a blue and a black, return an unblocked attacking rogue you control to its owner's hand. Put Zareth San, the Trickster, from your hand onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. For those of you who don't know what this sounds like, look up ninjutsu. Ninjutsu is so similar to this. This one is rogue jutsu, basically. It cares about rogues. But I feel like they could have created this and just called it ninjutsu. And it could have been, you know, a ninja merfolk. Or a ninja merfolk rogue. Because, let's face it, they've put 3 creature types on creatures before. So, I don't know why they couldn't just add ninja to it and give it ninjutsu. Maybe it would have been better to do that and then have a bonus ability to it if you did attack with a rogue. But this card, the only thing about this card that cares about rogues is the activated ability. Where ninjas don't care if it's a rogue, it just needs to be unblocked. I feel like this should have been Ninjutsu Commander. I'm not even going to bother with the last paragraph of text on this card. It's one of these things that it seems like it was a missed opportunity. Because a new ninja into the game, what would have been wrong with that? Oh, but there's no ninjas on Zendikar. But, you know, they can make exceptions. There's always the storyline, if that even exists nowadays, because I haven't really heard much about the storylines. But let's talk about one. This is a little bit of an older card that a lot of people have talked about for quite some time. Ever since it was previewed, I believe. Brutaclad, Telcor Engineer, 4 generic, a red and a blue. For a 4/4 legendary artifact creature Artificer. Not a mirror. There's a reason why I'm saying this. Creature tokens you control have haste. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 2/1 blue mirror artifact creature token. Then you may choose a token you control. If you do, each other token you control becomes a copy of that token. So, Brutaclad, so the design for Brutaclad was a neat concept. I really do like that. I have a Brutaclad build. But when you look at what Brutaclad is, look at the artwork, look at the token that it creates, why is this not a 5-color legendary mirror creature? You could have done something, we could have had something like this without it being Brutaclad necessarily. Or maybe just Brutaclad didn't have to necessarily create mirrors, even though the artwork definitely spells mirror. But a lot of people have been talking about wanting the 5-color mirror commander. Before anybody says it, I am well aware of Morphon. But Morphon is... no. His ability to reduce mana cost does absolutely nothing to do a 5-color mirror deck, because most mirrors are artifacts. But if you have a really good mirror 5-color legend, I feel like we're overdue for that, honestly. Because there are people that want to play with all the mirrors, and a good cycle of the mirrors are like the Iron Mirror, that they tap to produce one color, and because of color identity, we need a 5-color mirror legend to play with all of them. I feel like we need more mirror support, because mirrors, they were a cool tribe. They're definitely a casual fan favorite, you know, what have you. But we don't have one. We really need one. We're overdue for one. And Brutaclad could have been it, but I feel like that was just a missed opportunity. And a lot of people feel that way. But it just makes you wonder, what is the standard for a legendary creature? There are some legendary creatures that are just so underwhelming that it makes you wonder why it's legendary. For instance, going back to Zendikar Rising, Yasharn, Implicable Earth. 2 generic, a green and a white for a legendary creature, Elemental Boar, for a 4/4. When Yasharn enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic forest and a basic plains, reveal those cards, put them into your hand. He doesn't even put them onto the battlefield. Okay. Then shuffle your library. Players can't pay life or sacrifice non-land permanents to cast spells or activate abilities. That, I mean, cool, it's a Staxy effect, but does that really have to go on a legendary creature? These are the things that I'm talking about. This is a very underwhelming legendary creature, and this doesn't seem powerful enough to be legendary by any stretch, really. So many different opportunities. When you look at SRAM, Senior Edificer, that was a pretty cool concept. Okay, so whenever you cast an aura, equipment, or a vehicle, you can draw a card. And he's a 2-mana 2/2? Neat. Okay, but he's a legendary creature. But now, what about some of the Enchantress cards? Like Mesa Enchantress. Not a legendary. Or there's one more. I can't remember his name. It's a white soldier. I'll probably have the picture up on the video here soon. The white creature that lets you draw a card whenever you cast a equipment, and then with Metalcraft he equips for 0. He is a non-legendary card. SRAM was good enough to be a legendary, but that's not. Mesa Enchantress is not good enough. I mean, when you look back at some of the cards that have been marked as legendary and non-legendary, think about this. How many non-legendary cards are better than some of these legendary cards? And how many of these legendaries just aren't doing enough to be really labeled as a legendary creature. So, and I'm pretty sure the list can go on and on and on, but I don't want to sit here for about 2-3 hours naming off cards that they mislabeled. Because let's face it, some of these are extremely mislabeled. Especially when you look at it from a commander perspective. Yes, I understand they do design cards for standard. I understand this. That is a thing. But would some of them actually make any difference if they were legendary or not? Who knows? We'll have to see. But let me know down in the comments below, what do you guys think? Are there any cards that are marked as legendary that definitely shouldn't be? Or maybe is there a card that is not a legendary that you're just like, yes, that should have been a legendary creature from the get-go? And don't say Agent of Treachery just because in standard. In some aspects, sure, maybe, but in all actuality, not really. If it wasn't for certain aspects of standard, Agent of Treachery would have been fine. So we'll leave that one alone. But let me know down in the comments below what you guys think. Is there any cards that you wish were legendary that, maybe you wanted to build a commander deck around it, but because it's not legendary, it can't be your commander? Maybe there's a couple of commanders that you're just like, why? So let me know down in the comments below, and I will see you guys next video.